Thank you, man. Appreciate that. By the way, I am from Kentucky. I was born right here in Lexington, Kentucky, and I came home because I found my beautiful wife, Tabitha, and I ain't ever leaving. This is my home. God bless Kentucky. Are you guys ready to make some noise tonight? Are we ready to let them hear our voice? That's right. I'm telling you, they're running scared. How many veterans we got in the audience today? Raise your hand. God bless you guys. Let's thank them. Rough men and women, stand ready. That's why we can stand here today. My good friend Brian Gettle had a really great point about how the media is going to count us today, but I've got a solution. He said there's a dozen of us according to the local newspaper. You guys want to get them to count it right with me? Raise your hand if you're a bitter clinger. They'll get every one of you. They'll make sure and report that number, trust me. Folks, today we gather to affirm the following four things. First of all, there's a fundamental difference between us and the liberals who currently hold the balance of power in the White House and Congress. Am I right? There is a fundamental difference. Secondly, our government is no longer representative of the people. It's too big, it's too indebted, and it's too oppressive. Am I right? Third of all, because of this difference between us, this Congress fears us. We gathered over a year ago on the courthouse steps here in Lexington, Kentucky, and we told them to fear our vote. And they do fear our vote, and it's coming for them in November. Am I right? And fourth, and most importantly, we cannot underestimate what is at stake and why we gather. It is freedom itself. And ladies and gentlemen, we will rise in its defense. Am I right? Nancy Pelosi said last week that this health care bill is a lot like a refrigerator, the back of it. It's got all these wires on it. You don't know how it works. All you know is you open the door and the light comes on. That's all you need to know, she said. Well, I've had refrigerators with light bulbs that they're out and this refrigerator still works just fine. And I've had refrigerators with light bulbs that work fine, but all my food got spoiled because the motor was broke. Plus, my wife doesn't care how the light bulbs work. She gets mad if I leave the door open to make a snack because it runs up the electricity bill. In other words, the light is the least important part of the refrigerator. But Nancy Pelosi said this because she probably hasn't had to open her own refrigerator for the last 20 years. So just how out of touch are these people in Washington? She also said this just before the health care bill passed. She said, we have to pass this bill so you know what's in it. Well, the light bulb's on now, and I've seen what's in it. It's a spoiled, rotten mess. What Nancy Pelosi was really saying was that we aren't smart enough to understand the tough decisions in our lives and that government needs to do it for us. President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and every other member of Congress who voted for this health care bill believe that America's greatness comes from government. But you and I know this not to be true. The difference between us is that liberals expect greatness from government, which is impossible. While we expect greatness from the individual, which when we are free is inevitable. So there truly is a fundamental difference between us. My notes aren't too long. I know I'm a preacher's kid, but I promised Micah I'd have you out of here by 9 o'clock. Our government is no longer representative of the people who elected it. It's grown too indebted, too big, and too overreaching. Our national debt is currently $14 trillion. If we decided to pay it off at a rate of $1 million a day, it would take 29,000 years to pay it off, not counting interest. Now Congress and the Congressional Budget Office says President Obama's current plans will double this debt. And for the first time in our history, our government is trying to force us to agree to purchase a product whether we want it or not. Health insurance. This is in direct violation of both the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. Am I right? So what's now to stop them from telling us we have to purchase a government motors vehicle? After all, it's what's good for the country. And if they can tell us what we have to buy, how long before they can tell us what we can't buy? Since 1884, every single congressman has uttered the following words: I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will take this obligation freely, so help me God. I have to ask you tonight, have they kept their word? Have they kept their word? Who said liars? Say it again, liars! So our government is too big, it's too indebted, and it's no longer representative of the people. Now, because of their mistakes, and because we have begun to speak out at events like this all across this great country, the media and the liberals in Congress have begun to smear us. There are those who will call us right-wing extremists. Well, I ask you this. Why are we extremists? Because we want to keep the earnings that we get with our own hands. Why are we extremists? Because we want our children and our grandchildren to have better lives than us, like every American generation before it. Why are we extremists? Because we want to control our own lives, chart our own course within the rule of law, free from government coercion and interference. And why are we extremists? Because we want our government to follow the Constitution which our founding fathers left for us. We are not extremists.